Hi there! If you're anything like me, staying focused while working from home can be a real challenge. That's why I've compiled some of the best tips from the internet and my own experiences to help you take charge of your focus. The first thing that I think is really important is you're going to want to create a dedicated workspace. It doesn't have to be a full home office. Even half a dining room table or a desk will do. The idea is to have a space that you can leave set up with everything you need so you can get started working without any extra setup time. It's much easier to get into the zone when you have a designated space. If possible, try and design your space so that you enjoy being in it. That could mean adding a nice mouse mat or a plant to keep you company while you work. Novelty mugs can also make nice pen pots. I personally like to have as many of the following things in my workspace as possible. I like to have some sunlight, room for my laptop and a notepad at the same time, a plant, a coaster, and a mouse mat. As well as, maybe a stack of post-it notes. That's varied across, when I was doing my undergrad to now I have my own little setup. But even when I was without kind of my own home office space, during kind of intense revision periods, like before exams, I would speak to the people I was living with and say, I'm going to need this area of the dining room table in order to do my work and keep focused, and I'm going to need to leave that set up. Because I was finding it really difficult to, get all my papers out, spread everything around, and then have to pack it up, 20 minutes before you want to serve dinner on the table. So if possible, try and get yourself a designated space, but I know it's not always possible. The next one, having a loose schedule that's flexible to your work can be a great way to boost your motivation. One of the most important things to do, though, is keep track of how much or how little work you're doing across the week. You don't have to do this every week, but every now and again, just check in with yourself. Are you actually doing the amount of work you want to? Having a schedule where you can set how much work you want to do can be a great way of hitting your targets. So for example, it might be you want to do 20 hours of revision a week. If you're able to track and go, okay, I'm doing 4 hours there, 4 hours there, you can quickly see whether or not you're hitting that target. I personally don't typically start working before 10 a.m. when I'm at home, but I often work until 7 p.m. or even later into the evening, depending on whether I take breaks. And one thing that's helped me get more done is splitting the day into 2 halves with separate objectives in each half. You can even go even narrower than that and have a separate objective every 2 hours. I wouldn't suggest going any more fine grit than that, because I think you'll find that you spend ages trying to think of tasks to fill. But if you just have a rough idea of, I want to work on this morning or that in the afternoon, it can be really good. If you have reading or exercises to do, having some variety in the task types throughout the day can help you stay focused. So if you've got a stack of papers to read, you might go, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours reading papers, then I'm going to do exercises from the papers and kind of stay in a mindset for a chunk of time. Setting goals is also a really important part of keeping yourself motivated. There are various structures you can use for setting goals that I think work well, but if you're finding you struggle to meet the goals, or you keep feeling that you're setting your goals too high, or you meet your goals within the hour, try using the SMART framework to check whether they're reasonable. It's especially good if you're just starting out, but even if you've been setting your own goals for a while, just try it and see what you think. For me, having clear objectives helps me know what to work on next, and has become more and more important as I've advanced from, A-levels to PhD study. I think it's one of the things I find helpful is to add bullet points of tasks I would like to do to either a piece of paper or a Word document. At the moment I use just, a Notion. At the beginning of the day I do that for 2 minutes, and then at the end of the day I do it for another 2 minutes. So the one at the end of the day is to help me remember the next morning, what is it that I wanted to work on? Am I going to work on that today, or am I going to maybe reschedule it later and schedule in a time for it? It's also good to stop and reflect on your larger goals. Every 2 weeks I spend maybe 10 minutes planning and strategizing for my monthly or year-long goals. And the reason I do that is because with a PhD you kind of fall into the habit of being very, very hyper-focused on one thing. And it could be that I'm meeting all the targets for what I'm trying to do right now, but am I hitting my larger targets in terms of reading other papers and researching? Those things can get neglected. So checking in with myself bi-weekly can be really helpful to make sure I'm staying on track long term. Okay, the next thing I think everyone has to be a little bit guilty of. It can be extremely tempting to use your phone, watch a little bit of TV, or even just open a YouTube channel when working from home. I think removing the temptation just by moving your phone slightly out of reach or placing it on silence can make a huge difference. You can also get things like app blockers or website blockers. I personally don't use them. I did at undergrad. I had one where it would lock your phone for 60 minutes and it had a little image of a tree growing. And if you did need to use your phone before that point, it would kill the tree or something like that. I think those can be really helpful. Everyone has different situations at home, but I think managing the noises around you can help you stay focused. For me, music can be both an ally and an enemy. When it comes to keeping my focus, I suggest trying different styles of music and experimenting to see which ones make you more productive for certain tasks. For me, when I'm creating something like a PowerPoint, I can have some background music, but when I need more concentration or I'm reading, silence works the best for me. Taking regular breaks helps you to stay interested in doing your work for much longer over the day or even a week than trying to cram everything you need to do into a concentrated chunk of time. For a little while, I was really cramming in a lot of work Monday and Tuesday, and then by Wednesday I was just feeling exhausted and almost mini burnt out, and then not wanting to do anything for the rest of the week. But since I've adjusted my structure, I spread the work across Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm getting a lot more done over that period of time than I was in just cramming my Tuesday. For me, the right balance of break to work is about 5 to 10 minutes break every hour of work. And during breaks, it's really important if you're using screens to work that you try and give your eyes a rest. It's also a good idea to start using the 20-20-20 rule if you're mainly screen-based to protect your eyesight long term. So that's where you, every 20 minutes, look at something else for 20 seconds that's 20 feet away. I probably need to start doing that. My eyesight is not great. But yeah, that's something to consider if you're on the computer a lot. If you're feeling unwell, it's also a good idea to increase the amount of breaks you're having. So that might mean that every 20 minutes of work you have a 5-minute break. Or it could be, just having a half day or taking a whole day off from work so you can help yourself feel better sooner. I know that's not always possible, especially preparing for exams. I remember one year I was very ill with flu, and I just had to keep cracking on with the revision because you kind of aren't left with many options. So you kind of have to work through it. If you feel unwell or tired, try and give yourself permission to take that time off. It can be very flexible working as a student. But the other thing to remember is try not to fall into the trap of making excuses instead of working. So that might be, you're working and decide you need to get a snack then and there rather than waiting for your break. Or you decide, actually, I need to go to the shops and do all my weekly shop right now. Try and treat it like a 9 to 5 or any other job where you wouldn't just decide to walk out and go do something else. If you're a PhD student, the next tip I think is especially important. Try to reach out to others. This could be asking someone to go for a coffee. It could be a 5-minute chat in the office about your research. Even if you're more introverted, the amount of social interaction a PhD brings can be very low. So regularly working in conversations and meetings is a great way to protect your mental health and also gain new ideas for your research. Another benefit it has is it kind of holds you a little bit accountable. If you go 2 weeks without speaking to anyone, you only have yourself to hold you accountable to whether you're making progress. If you aren't sure where to start with making these kind of connections, there's often reading groups or workshops you can join, or even just start going into the office. Even if you have an office available to you or a communal workspace, try going in 2 days a week, see who's there, see if you can make any, friends. I think that's a good thing to consider, whether working from home is actually working for you, because it always sounds good, but it's not necessarily the best for everyone. The next tip I have is rewarding yourself. So you can set up a reward system for yourself when you complete a task or reach goals. I think a lot of, undergraduate advice is kind of put like a gummy bear on every part of the text you need to read, or A-level advice. Once you get to the point where you're having to read paper after paper, you have to maybe be a little bit more strict with how much reward you get, else you're using a lot of gummy bears. But for me, it could be something like, at the end of the week, if I've read what I intended to, giving myself, a bar of chocolate. Or maybe it's, if I'm going to get this project done, I'm going to treat myself to having a drink I really like from the shops, and I'm going to drink that while I do it and make it fun that way. So for example, when I was revising for exams, I'd always get, like a Lipton iced tea, not sponsored. But, and that would, motivate me, especially in summer when it's hot. When I was doing research for my video, I was finding stuff, like stay positive, maintain a growth mindset. It'll help you stay motivated. And I think that's very, sure, it's true, that if you're positive, you're going to have a better productivity rate, but it can be very difficult in the moment. So I think maintaining the idea that you're making progress as long as you're working is a good one. I also found a great video on working when your mental health is dipping, and one of the key advice pieces that came from that video was don't compare yourself to yourself. So that might mean that maybe last month you were able to revise 8 hours straight, no problem, but now you're struggling to stay focused for 2 hours. If you stop penalizing yourself in your head and say, oh, I'm so bad at revision now, I need to be doing more, it's not really helpful, and it costs you a lot of emotional energy and actual energy. So try and do the best that you can with the energy you have each day, and just work towards little targets. I hope that you found some of that helpful, and you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe. If you're interested in more PhD content, I have been slowly uploading stuff to the channel, so I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, and goodbye!